We're ready for the next stage in our leek grow along. So far we have sown the summer and autumn varieties. So this is the Bulgarian giant leeks that we're following along for the grow along. And that is hopefully what yours are starting to look like now, if you did join in with these particular types. Now is a great time to start pricking out some of these leeks if you want to make sure that you've got larger leeks than leaving them all in the tray in one go. So we'll be looking at doing that today. And then it is also time to have a look at actually sowing any of our winter varieties. So these are ones that are more hardy and they're actually going to stay in the ground over winter to be harvested up till around sort of now next year. So I've got a variety called Winter Giant, and then I've got a couple of older seeds which are Musselburgh and Elephant. So I'm going to pop those in. It is always better to actually use newer seeds with any of the allium family because they're more likely to germinate, but we'll see whether or not they do come up. For those varieties, I have now got some smaller trays, so they're going to be popped into the smaller tray. And then for the Winter Giant, we'll be using exactly the same tray as we did for the Bulgarian Giant ones. For the Bulgarian Giant ones that we're putting on, I'm using multi-purpose peat-free compost again, but this time it's the unsieved one. I'm just using a stick or a dibber, just going to make some holes right down to the bottom. These are slightly deeper trays. It doesn't matter if you don't have deeper trays, any tray will do, particularly for this. The leeks, when we plant them out, are often planted deep, so it's not going to make a difference, unlike with our onions, of how deep we plant them now. And then we just want to poke into the tray and get them out with as much roots as we possibly can. If you've got a single pot rather than an entire tray, then just turn it upside down, take it out, drop it onto your surface, and it will just straight away come apart. You won't need to go digging around. And then we just want to work these roots down into the pot and secure the leek into place. We can add a little bit more compost in a moment as well. And we can just add a little bit more compost onto the top of the tray. And just give it a bit of a shake. Make sure they are all poking through and that we haven't buried any at this point. That looks good. And pop a label in it. And then all we need to do with these next is give them a water, and then they can carry on growing in exactly the same position that they were before, so outside under cover with no additional heat. Too much additional heat is going to make them go leggy and they could start falling over, so we don't want to be encouraging that. And then for these ones, just going to carefully pop these back in and add a bit more compost in there just to help resettle these ones, and they'll be absolutely fine. And they'll recover themselves. So as we can see, some of these are starting to go a little bit yellow on the top. So one of the things that we can do at this point is actually to add some extra compost to the top just to give them a bit of additional feed. With the peat-free compost, I have found over the last couple of years that they're not as happy staying in this same tray for as long without a little bit of feed. You wouldn't normally expect to feed them at all within the tray, but the peat compost offer feed for longer. So it is something that we want to consider because we don't want this yellowing to continue and them to really start struggling. You can, of course, prick them all out if you want to, but I don't want to go to that effort, so it's easier just to leave them in the tray for myself. Here we go. Any that are buried will find their way back up anyway, so don't worry too much about that, and it'll resettle as well. So I'll probably give that another sort of 2 weeks, and then I'll be looking at adding a little bit of feed to these trays as well, just to keep them nice and green. Another thing we can do if we want to is just to trim the tops ever so slightly and get rid of those seed heads. Don't necessarily need to do that, but it can help them get that little bit stockier. So we won't need to look at these again now until they are actually ready to be planted out. So we're looking really for the thickness to be anywhere between sort of this end to that end before they are ready to plant out. And they're great to plant out after our potatoes or something that's gone in that little bit earlier. So these will just sit happily now in their trays until we see them next. This is exactly as we did with the Bulgarian giant varieties. So all I've got here is some peat-free multi-purpose compost that I've sieved just to make sure that we've got no larger lumps in there. And then we'll just sow into these trays. With older seeds, I am sowing it thicker than I would often do. And I am sowing a lot of seeds because these aren't just for me, so you don't need to sow this many necessarily. And then they're going to now get covered with a little bit of compost, and it is just a sprinkling. We don't want to put too much on here at all. It's likely warm enough now if you've got an undercover space to actually germinate these outside. Otherwise you can take them in, but they do want to move exactly the same as we did with the Bulgarian giant ones. As soon as they've germinated, back outside to an unheated undercover space. We do not want these too hot. We're going to do exactly the same as before, where we water them from the bottom and then they'll sit with domes. So they'll sit for me now inside the polytunnel, but you may need to take them into the house.